Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Johnston, and I'm your host today for the 5 o'clock club. I really appreciate the Rittenhouse Square Fine Art Fair for letting me share my studio with you and all my works. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where I'm from, what I do, what I used to do, and then we'll start looking at different things in the studio. So anyway, they're saying hi. Um, I live in Carmel, Indiana. I'm originally from northern Minnesota. I spent 20 years living in New Jersey. And back when I was living in New Jersey, I, of course, started my career outside of college. I do not have an art degree. I have degrees, double major English and communication with a journalism minor, where I fell in love with photography and actually considered becoming a photographer and using very creative photography to do shows and such, but the painting just won out in the end. I did work in the corporate world for a while. I worked at a company called CM Offray. They make narrow fabrics. So if you sew, if you've ever seen um, ribbon, either on clothing or, on, I guess, on baskets, all kinds of stuff, they made what they call narrow fabrics. And I worked in the graphic arts department. Of course I did. And I did a lot of layouts and custom catalogs and point of purchase displays and those kinds of things. And I'm just old enough that I can tell you that we used to order type from the type house. So, and do the layouts with spray mount on big boards in the offices. So that tells a lot. We didn't have a computer when I started working for this company. Anyway, at some point after being there for quite a while, I got married. I had two babies in about 11 and a half months. And I left my job and I started playing around with painting again. I had done lots of painting as a kid, but also lots of pen and ink and drawing and all that. If you look on my website, there's even a photograph of me from the Duluth News Tribune. And there's a group of us that are painting in a park. And I'm the one with the long pigtails. And I thought all the other women were ancient in the photo, but they were probably in their 30s or something. Um, so yes, I first learned the oils when I was 14, but gave them up. They were too messy, too all kinds of things for, especially for my parents to deal with in the house. So here I was as an adult with two little kids, and I really wanted to be creative again. And I started taking watercolor lessons at the Somerset Art Association, which is located in Bedminster, New Jersey, where we lived. And I started doing miniature work and just I did a lot of flowers and a lot of buildings. And I'm going to show you what I used to do. So I started doing craft fairs in New Jersey, and I was doing a lot of things like this. Can you see this? I If this doesn't scream like early 1990s to you, I don't know what else to say. Um, I have a few of these still left at home. I actually found them just recently, and they've been boxed up for years. And I love doing very close-up work. I have very good eyesight. Still to this day, I wear a one-point reader when as necessary. And a lot of my paintings that I create that are landscapes with the trees and such, actually there's usually something for the visitor up close, plus the people that are viewing from far away. So I like to continue that particular thing on because, as I said, I love to do little small works, but the reality is I do a lot of bigger things today. Um, my studio is located on the third floor. I'm above the Magdalena Gallery, and Magdalena is she teaches, and there's a small gallery downstairs. And of course, I rent this third floor space. I am not open for retail hours. I am open when the city does these like meet me on Main events. I can be open sometimes if I'm not on the road. Back when we, of course, used to do more shows. Um, I finally did an outdoor fair last weekend for the first time in a very long time. And I'll tell you what, putting up that tent was not easy. And I get plenty of exercise, but I was using muscles. I guess I'd forgotten how to put that tent in the air, so I was sore. And it was a beautiful day even all 3 days of setting up and then the 2 days of the show were just beautiful. But today it's about 84 degrees outside here, and I just can't even imagine having to do that again in the heat. But I will, because this is the business that I love. I, I love the art business. I love to paint. I very much enjoy the clients and talking to people about all things art, and very proud of some of the things that I have achieved in over the years with my art. I do a lot of commission work. I do a lot of custom pieces. I also do a lot of work for healthcare, corporate. I'm represented by a number of galleries around in the US and in England. And I've been just very grateful for all the good things that have come out of this. And I continue to try to, I guess, find new and better, change my style just a hair. Although, doing shows, you really need to keep your body of work pretty consistent for certain shows. But I do like to branch out and try new things. And I'm going to show you a piece I've been working on that's a little bit different from anything else that I do. But again, it all goes back to those watercolor brushes. That's the only training I had, was taking watercolor classes. And I paint with the oils as like a watercolorist would, except of course you're not working with negative space and all those fun things. I love the oils. I had changed over to oils when I first moved here to Indiana. I had a faux painting business also in New Jersey. I did a lot of walls and textures and all those things, and working big. And so I was able to take that knowledge and transfer that knowledge over to making big canvases. I do some work on wood large, but honestly, it's really heavy to do that. So again, you'll see the different substrates and all that I work on. Canvas being, I guess, the most common, although wood is getting more and more common, it seems like every day. I do like to stretch my own canvases. I like to do the preparation of those canvases from the beginning. The gesso, if I'm adding a sand texture to it, there's something about building something from the ground up that really makes it yours. And at one point I did try to have somebody doing some prep work for me, and their underneath brush strokes did not look like mine. So, you have these multiple layers of things going on with the good painting, and some of this didn't look like it was mine. So I went back to just doing everything myself. One of the things that I really, really like to use is this Liquitex sand, natural sand texture. I'm going to show you the bottle, if you can see that. It's not inexpensive to buy these. They're about $10 a piece, but a nice coat of it on your canvas or your wood before, and then let that dry, and I do a solid color then over it. Certainly not every piece of work I do has that texture. There are a good lot of them though that do. It helps the work look soft. It just gives it a feel that I can't necessarily explain it without showing you, the two different textures. I also, I guess, being a journalism student, I had, as I said, taken a lot of photography, and I still do take some photos. I use some photo references. That helps me, especially, where to put the light placement or whatever. Even though my work appears to be pretty stylized, I don't do much realistic work anymore. Like even when I first started doing oils, I did very realistic looking work, but I just got into doing lots of color field pieces and my own little stylized landscapes. And it's been very fun. It's been great to have clients react to them. People enjoy them, and somehow, some way, my work is somewhat serene and peaceful, even though that's not necessarily in my own makeup. I'm very anxious. I'm actually a little nervous today just doing this, but here I am. So that's one thing the last year has taught me, is how to do some live events, which is great, because I would never have done this before, not on my own. Anyway, I'm going to give you a little tour around the studio. So I have about 900 square feet here. To pull the power. I have about 900 square feet here in the studio, which is great. I have a lot of windows, which is also great. The north side of the studio is this direction, so I face north and east. You can see a little bit of down the street. You know, where we live here in Indiana, it's pretty flat. So I'm on the third floor. You feel like you can see for miles. We have a great little downtown on Main Street. I've been up in this space now for 12 years. Really watched Carmel grow and change, which is really, really nice that we have such an artsy community here. Anyway, so this pile is, well, one work that I still would like to do a little work on, canvas that I've made myself and wrap. I've been getting the heavy duty stretcher bars from Dick Blick, and if you can see, there's a stabilizer bar across the back. They make those, it couldn't be any easier to put that all together. I also have some of what you're seeing here is ampersand cradle board. I do order some that are custom sizes periodically, but I love working on the ampersand boards. This is one of my 16 by 16 pieces. I'm just going to take it down so you can see what that is. It's a gesso board. They are really super flat when they arrive. I actually do an underpaint of acrylic, and that gives it a little bit of texture. And again, I don't know if you can see it under here, but you do, when you get up close to it, you see that underpaint. You see the texture of that underpaint. These three pieces over here, this too is an ampersand board. And sorry, this is wobbling. And on this board, I put a sand texture on it, and then another coat of acrylic before I start putting the oils. These plain airframes are from Omega. If any artists out there, you might know of Omega. They do sell wholesale. Of course, you know, those of us working in this profession have a tax ID. So I just found that I needed something simple. Hey there. I needed something simple to frameworks on. I don't frame a lot, just the small ones. I think they look a lot better with that frame on them. But I also, again, I still have the 2-inch deep cradle boards. Again, these are 16 by 16s. This one, let me put it down there. This is a custom size 2, 24 by 48. And I'm gonna show you in a little bit how to make these, how I make these tree type things. And then there's all my 12 by 12s. I'm very well known for my blocks, my 12 by 12s. They're very colorful. Probably about half the work I sell these days goes to corporate and through galleries, and they all the art consultants love the look of this. They love the birch, the look of the birch. I polyurethane these before I start, and again, put an acrylic texture on, and then paint on top of them. It's a big 60 by 60. I mean 60 by 48, sorry. This one you can really see the sand texture. I'm hoping you can. Let's put it that way. And then of course I do some work that doesn't have sand texture. I love to do this kind of, I call them striations. They're not stripes, they're striations because most of them don't cross to the other side. Oh, here's a pile of the blanks. Just getting ready for, actually have shows coming, so it's just pretty exciting to be able to do some work and get ready for shows. This is a 40 by 40. So this piece would be on canvas, and I pull my own canvas. And I have a few more other odd pieces here. I believe this is one that I put on the for sale on the Rittenhouse show. I know it's sideways. More of what I call, these are my older style trees, and I'm going to show you how I do those also. This large diptych, my husband actually made those boxes, and those are oil and cold wax. I like working with cold wax sometimes. I don't love the smell of it. It kind of really bothers me. But I like the look of it. It makes the pieces a little more subtle. These are some really tall trees. And then there's some more that are, this is a 36 by 36. I had just done a commission like that for someone in New Jersey, so I decided I love the color so much that I made another one. Anyway, I'll go back to my perch. If anybody has any questions for me, please ask. Okay, that's better. I don't know who sent that to me. Nothing to be nervous about, only 50,000 people watching. Oh my gosh. I don't know what it is. I could be in my booth all day and I talk to people that have Liquitex and those that don't. Okay, I can do that. Actually, I have two right here. So this red board will be some of those small trees. I don't know if you can see it, but can you see the texture on it? These two bands, when I do those tree pieces, they have two horizons. One thing I learned from doing watercolors, that you could, to get the feeling of pushing the work, pushing that horizon line back, is to make sure that you have some cerulean on that horizon line. It was a rule I learned in class, and I haven't I've been doing it ever since. And then that second horizon line is where the sky then starts. The back of those trees for me represents like a hill in the distance. Where we lived in New Jersey, we had massive forest behind our house. They had carved a neighborhood out of the top of a hill, and there was dedicated open space behind our house. So we had all those tall forest trees, and they're beautiful. But because they had all grown up so close together, most of them didn't have any lower branches, although there was lots of flowering trees in the woods in the spring. So this is one of the gesso boards, and this does not have the sand texture. But do you see what I've done as far as making myself an acrylic base that gives me a little bit of texture to work on? And that way it grabs the brush a bit better. There's one more thing that I like to use. I really, really love to do some works on fine linen. So this is a Belgian linen canvas that I'm sure I got at Blick's. Again, I don't put a texture on it. The linen is just so beautiful at working on it. I stick to soft brushes, and working with a soft brush on this kind of, this linen fabric, it just feels so good. I have a hard time with larger pieces on linen because they seem to be, you have to re-stretch them over and over again, at least in my world you do. And most of the clients that I do work for request, they prefer canvas anyway, especially custom work that is going to be framed or otherwise. And they like the look of the gallery wrap because all of my big canvases, I paint around the sides. I continue the image around the sides. That way you don't have to mess with the frame. Um, and shared. Yes, I do have a lot of nice space. I love it up here. They'll probably be taking me out of here feet first when I'm old because I don't know what I would ever do without this studio. It's an artist's dream, really, to have a space like this. I don't have much storage, unfortunately. That there is a storage room, but I share it with the gallery downstairs. It's part of what my rent is, and that's fine. Um, so I do keep some of my things at home. Certainly my show kit, and I call my show kit, and some of the frames, and that I don't need are in my basement. Um, I, along with everything else that goes, extra stuff. I even keep a full set of paints at home. I do have an easel in that corner of my kitchen, which looks out over. We have a pond that we share with 19 other houses, and I like to sit there and work too, but I just can't do big work there at all. It has to be, like tops 36 by 36. Because I just don't have the room and the place to dry everything, which is why I ended up in the studio, getting a studio in the first place, because the commission work I started getting was bigger and bigger. And I like to work large, so this ended up all just working out really fine for me. That being said, I'm going to have you take a look at, turn this. I should have played around with this before so you can see. This is like a new style trees that I've been playing around with. I've actually done a couple of pieces already as really large commission works based on this piece, but I just feel like I'm not done with this one. Both times it was something that people came directly to my studio and said, "Oh, I love this, but I want it huge." So I've done some huge works. Um, Again, this kind of trees, all the ones I do, I am using a script liner. And like doing the watercolors with the Japanese brushes that I used to have, that script liner acts as such, and you have to get enough paint and moisture on it to get that long stroke. Although I have a very steady hand, so P.S. People often ask me, "Oh my gosh, did you draw all that in first?" In the case of this piece, no, I didn't draw anything in. In the case of, like, you see the piece back there with the tall trees, that piece, I drew lines, just one line with a chalk pencil and a ruler to make sure that it's straight, and then it's very easy for my hand to go upwards and make those tall trees. However, I cannot make that piece is 48 inches tall. So those trees are about at least 30. I can't do that in one stroke. I have to go back in and fill in. I don't know if you can see this. I'm gonna turn this just a bit. So I do use liquid for this. Just pick a spot on here. That's a little bit lighter than I wanted it to be, but if you couldn't see it, let me know. I'm going to go back over that with the dark. Here, I'll turn it. I know this looks really tedious, but I enjoy it. So some of these pieces take me, hours and hours and hours, but that's okay. There we go. And by doing the light, that light color first, it gives it, it could be, you know, a light source coming, but I'm going to close that back up now because I don't really want that there. Not in this one. Any questions so far? Do you use linseed oil? Like, yes, I use liquid. Not fond of linseed oil. Not really sure why. I think I don't like the smell of it, which I know that sounds ridiculous, but very true. I just don't like the smell of it. Steady hand. I know I can lay tile too perfectly, even without a chalk line. I don't know. I guess it was a gift I got from somewhere. My grandfather was an artist, but he was a sculptor, and he did folk art kinds of things. You know, animals, some people, but mostly animals and fish. Those kinds of things. He had his studio up until he was well, he died. He was almost 94, and he still had the studio, but the last year of his life he wasn't in it very much. So I literally have a house full of carved birds, ducks, bears, and a couple of women. There we go. And we just love them. Okay, I'm going to try it one more time here. That's it for that one. Like I said, I really feel like this piece still needs some work. I just haven't figured out everything I want to do to it yet. And a few galleries that I work with are interested in having some pieces like this. So I'm probably going to, over the summer, I will work on doing just that and making a handful more so I can have a selection, I guess you could say. Oh, these are some of my favorites. Now this one is one of the few bristle brushes I have in my studio. I really prefer working with soft brushes. However, every once in a while you got to have something. Every once in a while you have to have something that will really get some paint on there and thickly. And bristle is a classic oil painting brush that does that job. This. There's a couple of filberts here. I mostly use filberts, and I'm going to show you how I use them. I am not a great paint mixer. I actually kind of don't like it, and as I said, I paint like a watercolorist. So I'm going to show you how I mix paint with a brush. And sometimes I just get what I get. These little script liners do the small things. That's another one. These longer ones, of course, they're not natural sable. Certainly, they are synthetic sable. But this brush, this Raphael, this brand is just one of my favorites. These brushes are super soft. I try to save them for the pieces I don't use the sand texture because the sand texture chews up brushes like crazy. So these are blue tip royals. They are cheap as can be. I buy them in bulk from someplace in Delaware. You get a better price on them if you buy 12 of each. I keep a huge inventory of these around in all different sizes. This one's an 8. They come in all different sizes. You know what? I think I'm trying to remember the name of the place. It's in Delaware. You know what? You could send me a message on Facebook or something. I can try to find it for you because it's like I said, I buy them in bulk and they're less than $2 a piece when you do that. I do try to save as many of them. I do wash brushes out. I use something called Brush Flush and soak them in that for a day, and then you just use some. No, I don't get them at Jerry or Artarama. Oh, you know what? I can open up let me open up my email. I'm sure I have the name of it here somewhere. You may very well find them at Jerry's Artorama though. Um, paintbrush. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, no. Well, anybody that's interested, just send me a. You can send me an email. My email is mjohnstonart at gmail.com, or just get on my website, Mary Johnston Studio. I like my homemade sign. I almost forgot to make that sign, but then I watched a 5 o'clock that was on Jerry was on YouTube yesterday, and she had the sign behind her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to make one. So there it is. Not very classy, that's for sure, but it does the job. Um, they do have. Let me see. I use these charcoal whites because the minute you hit over it with any of your paint or your liquid, it disappears. The lines disappear. Oh no. I'm not seeing the other ones. I have some big Princeton brushes too, some really big ones. Um, those are a little more pricey, but they do the job too, and they're not filberts. They're regular brushes, and I use them to do the backgrounds and such. Oh, Michaels has them. Yeah, that might be where I got the very first ones. Um, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to try to put this so you can see what I'm going to do with this filbert. I'll back up a little bit. Some of my work, so this is liquid. Just grab a little bit of it. It tends to go and soak into the brush, so you really don't have to use much of it past that. So when I'm doing when I'm doing these abstract pieces, here, I'll put this forward. Could do a little bit of that, and let's say I want to put some purple next to it. And then I'll put a line of purple, and so on and so forth. Normally on these squares, when I do them, I make at least one line somewhere just to have it as a reference point. Obviously, I'm not doing it right now, but yeah, then I'll wipe them out, and oh, can you see? So there's still some purple on the brush, and it's just blending with that white, but it also leaves this sort of uneven, shadowy with a little bit of purple in the white thing. And so I'll do a whole piece like that, and you're really blending these colors together right there with the brush. So keep going over the edges. I mean, obviously, if I'm doing this by myself, I'm being really careful. Right now, I'm just trying to give you all something to watch. I'll tell you what, this last year has been the year of the blues, that's for sure. And I mean it. People are just wanting blue everything, colors, blue sky, blue this. Simple Sig is the Cradle board. Yes, it's just a board. Ampersand is great. If you really want custom sizes, you can call them, and it does cost. They're not cheap, but these 12 by 12s, once I started using them, I couldn't stop using them because people just love them. I know that there's a lot of other painters that use, their own. They might have a carpenter that they use to make boxes. They might have a different company that they use. I never found one of those, I guess, and just because I've been using these for so long, like I'll have a client that might buy, 3, 4 squares off me and then 2 years later come back and buy another 3, 4 squares. So I'm keeping the consistency together for my clientele. And again, I love the look and the feel of them. They just make a great presentation, truly. So that's how I use this filbert. As I said, most of the pieces that I work on, I'm using filberts and I'm using those script liners. Or I'm going really small. And with the oils, and I'm sure there's some oil painters among you, as you know, the oil is not totally opaque. It has some translucency to it. At least most of the colors do. And I will have to go back over all of this a second time and maybe even touch in on a third time. It's it makes the work my work, and everybody's got their style and how they do it. I did try to use years ago. I did some paintings using just knives and sold them. Just didn't love it though. Love the feel of the brush in my hand. Not really sure why, but that I do. Does anybody have any more questions for me? Somebody said simple signature kind. Are you still talking about the paintbrushes? And yes, I did say these are gesso boards. The company make surfaces for just about everything. So they have aqua boards for watercolor. They have clay boards for mixed media. You can also do water. I think you do a little watercolor on those clay boards. I have used them when I've been desperate if I can't find the gesso boards. There's been times where they're all of a sudden they're out and I've had an order I have to fill, but I don't love them. Love them as much as the gesso boards. The clay boards, even with you put an acrylic surface on them, there's something about the brush sticking to them. Okay, so you said the script liner. I don't know. If you look up royal blue handled brushes, as I said, there's a place in Delaware that I get them in bulk. They're not very expensive. So if you mess one up, throw it up. Then you can start over again totally. All right, so that being said, when I do my small tree pieces, such as this, I will make some lines. See if I can get this to work. Just to make sure that my trees don't look like I've been drinking all afternoon. I gotta find my script liner again. I'll take some of this dark gray. I usually don't make them with dark gray. I usually do a brown, but okay, I have to get in camera range. Simple Signature brand. I'm hoping you can see this. So I just take that liner. I'm gonna have to go back and get more paint on it. I can't do that whole thing in one shot for some reason. Go up. And then to do the branches and such, you kind of lose, like, you bring your hand farther back up the brush and let it go loose. Let it go loose. And that's how you get some interesting branches and such. If you turn over the control of this a little more to the brush than your hand, it's how you really get the interest in these things. You see it? I know. I could have used a darker color. Do you ever play with photo painting from your past? Um, I have. Actually, I have. And even I I I have used some of like paper and add it to the gesso, or I have used some really thick, you can, so that Liquitex gel that I showed you, not gel, it's a natural sand. Liquitex makes all these products with stuff like um, black lava and flakes and all those kinds of things. I do play with them sometimes. I do. But I haven't done any of that in a while. Um, Mostly because I'm so busy working on the things that I am working on. I just haven't had a chance to play around with other stuff. Um, but I will. And like I said, this piece is one I've had this sitting in the studio for 2 years. I still don't think it's done. I'm still trying to, but again, I've done two huge commission works off of this piece, and they have a little bit more finish to them than this one does. So we'll see. I get to try. Now, the other thing this script liner is good for is making grass. And that's another element that you'll see in some of my works. I love the open prairie. I also love the beach. Um, the And this is where you really do just lose yourself. Lose that brush. Hold it way far back on the brush. You see this? Let's go for some green. We might be able to see this better. Um, I can be a little bit more loose because this is on a sand texture panel. When I do this on a panel that doesn't have sand texture, I have to go really slow and really careful. I do have at least one square back up there. It's on the second row, second from the right, that has some of that seagrass or whatever it is, reeds, um, that I like to paint. Here, I just did this a little bit slower. Now you can see. There you go. Now I want to talk about paint, because what's more fun than having all this paint in your paint box? You know what? I'm going to bring this over here. I know. Now I'm talking to myself. It's perfect. Oh my gosh. How can it be 5:45 already? Here's my paint box. What a mess, right? Um, while you can see that, I'll turn it down. I love Gamblin. I love their bright colors. But one thing that I've learned is that other companies make colors that I like too. And I do use a number of Winsor & Newton colors. I actually like their cerulean better than the Gamblin. It's just a little softer or something. I love to use, one thing you see in my work is these radiant colors that Gamblin makes. Love the radiance. I know they're a little pastel for some people, but I really, really like them. I'm not a huge fan of black. I tend to use the dark grays more, or the Payne's gray is one thing that I use in black replacement. I also use indigo periodically. Having grown up on Lake Superior, the water can be very dark, and I love using some of the imagery from growing up on big water like that. And it just, I don't know, instead of a black, it's a really, really dark blue. And it sort of feels like like black periodically. Okay, another thing, I used to teach. I used to have students come up to my studio up here, and I taught like basically open studio and help them do whatever they wanted to do. Um, I love this Charvin paint also. It comes in, this is like the medium, um, and then this is the extra fine oil that's more expensive. This Provence blue is just luscious. I had a student that was the one that turned me on to these Charvins, so um, I have some colors in them. I absolutely panicked about a month ago when I had to fix a painting for Magdalena, and she was out of town. And it was like, oh my God, what color blue is that? And she says ultramarine. I don't use ultramarine, but I went back. My stepmother had given me some of these paints. They're from the 60s. I actually got this thing open and used it, and it was like it had never been used. It was beautiful inside. So that's a Winsor & Newton from retro 60s. Another thing that I really like to use because is so much white in my paintings is the Gambling Quick Dry White. It has safflower oil instead of linseed, and it does dry faster. And so when I'm making, especially, you can see around you here in my studio that I do a lot of cloud work, and I use that quick dry white along with some warm white to do clouds, and then of course fill in with the grays and the other things. Those big filbert brushes really help me do the clouds to get that feel of the softness and the roundness in all the cloudscapes that I do. Gosh, I don't know. Is there anything anybody else wants to know from my studio today before I go? Please feel free to ask. Just going to wait a minute and see if there's anything else. Again, I wanted to thank the show for inviting me to do this. This has been fun and something that I'm learning to do. It's getting easier every time. Is giving a talk from the studio. So, thanks everybody for joining me, and I'm hoping I get to see everyone in September. Fingers crossed that there'll actually be a show. That'd be an in-person show. Would be really wonderful. And again, thank you. Bye now.